Hello friends, and welcome to Bible study. There'll be 3 videos today because again, we're in the NIV. Okay, I know that makes lots of emotional reactions. It's just the first book. Stick with me. We're going to go through all of them. We're going to read every word of all of them. And if I see things in there where I'm like, hey, I don't like that, I'll say so. Trust me. Because I'm not looking to make it like this is the ultimate version of the Bible. It's just a version. So in this, we're in Matthew. We're going to be in chapter 27, and we're going to go verses 1 through 31. And then in the next video, we will finish the rest of chapter 27, because it's 66 verses. So I'm breaking it, basically, in half. Not quite half, but close enough. It's based on the parables. All right, so chapter 27, verse 1. Judas hangs himself. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people came to the decision to put Jesus to death. They bound him, led him away, handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 coins to the chief priests and elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. He can't undo that kind of sin once it's done. So they're like, too bad for you. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself, which of course is a sin. The chief priest picked up the coins and said, it's against the law to put this money in the treasury since it's blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah, the prophet, was fulfilled. They took the 30 silver coins, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me. Zechariah 11, chapter 11, verses 12 and 13. Jeremiah chapter 19, verses 1 through 13, and 32, 6 through 9. Next parable, Jesus before the Pilate. It's not really a parable, but that's just what they have at the top. Jesus before Pilate. Verse 11. Still in chapter 27. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they bring against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge. To the great amazement of the governor, he gave a non-reaction. Now it was the governor's custom at the feast to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At this time, they had a notorious prisoner, Barabbas. So when the crowd was gathered, Pilate asked to them, "Which one do you want me to release, Barabbas or Jesus, who was called Christ?" For he knew it was out of envy that they handed over Jesus to him. Like, he didn't see a real crime here. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." Ooh, so he was forewarned. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called Christ?" They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" they asked. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw that this was getting nowhere, but instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood. It is your responsibility. So as you reap, so shall you sow." They tried to throw that sin back onto Judas, and then Pilate just threw that sin back onto the Jewish people. Understand that in this climate that Pilate is in, if the Jewish people rebelled one more time, he was going to be killed by his emperor. And the Roman people have this tendency that if there's too many in the history of the Roman, I'm not talking about modern day Rome, I'm talking about conquering Rome. They had this history at this time of, if your religion causes too much problems, you are not allowed to worship it. We will remove it from you. And you will worship our religions, or you will die. So, that Inquisition thing didn't come out of nowhere. They sort of had a history of that in the Roman culture already. Verse 25 here. All the people answered, "Let his blood be on us and on our children." Whew, that's not so good. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. He wasn't really just flogged, was he? It was a bit extra. The soldiers mock Jesus. Verse 27. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus to the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then they twisted together a crown of thorns, and they set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him, and they took the staff and struck him on the head again and again after they mocked him. They took off the robe and put his clothes on him, and then they led him away to be crucified. And how is anybody? It's terrible what they're doing there, of course, on all levels to any people, especially painful in the heart that it's Jesus. Such cruelty. I am incapable of understanding the need for such cruelty to anything on that level. That's why I very firmly hold the belief that our ancestors were less human than we are right now. Because really being a full human, if we were in our full human state, we would all by default react to everybody like Jesus did.